Welcome to the Room4 Recap, the heartbeat of the faith and family film industry. I'm Laura May, your host and industry insider from Christian Casting. I am thrilled to bring you the ultimate weekly experience that goes beyond the screen. This is not just a podcast. It's a movement, a community, and a celebration of the incredible stories shaping our faith-based film world. We are so excited you're here. Are you ready to jump in? Let's go. Hi, my name is Laura May, and I am the founder of Christian Casting and the Room4 app. I am a wife, mom of 9, casting director, producer, actress, and writer from Southern Maryland.
Hello, my name is Xavier Garcia, writer-director based north of Boston, and excited to get into all things cinema and story.
Hi, I'm Drew Hunt. I'm a wife, a mom of 4, an actor, a content creator, and I am so excited to be spending this time here with you.
Hey guys, I'm Keys, and I'm a mom to 3 amazing kids. I'm a writer, an actor, a radio host, and a Room4 intern. I'm excited to be on this journey with you. I am all in.
So, what is the Room4 Recap? Here's what you'll find as you come along on this journey. We are your backstage pass to the latest in faith and family films with upcoming news, compelling interviews with industry leaders, exciting opportunities for exclusive giveaways, free festival passes to VIP access at industry events, and more. This isn't just news, it's an invitation to be a part of something extraordinary. We are not just observers here. We are participants in the Room4 movement, and we want to invite you to join us.
And we're back with another new show for you guys. This time it's another discussion show. So if you want to check out our last episode, we were hitting you with some industry events, some encouragement, some giveaways, and we would love for you to revisit that show if you haven't yet. This show, we are going to tackle something called rebranding. And the whole, we talk about doing that as, as businesses, as actors, we rebrand ourselves. But really right now, if you look at what's happening with a faith-based and even family-friendly film industry, the whole thing is in the process of rebranding right now. Even Pure Flix, right? Pure Flix is no longer Pure Flix. It is now the Great American Pure Flix, and Candace Cameron Bure is behind that. And if you don't know anything about that, I mean, literally the whole tide is shifting, and that is what today's show is all about. So that's my teaser, and we are going to jump right in and discuss basically one of the first things that we want to tackle is what even is a faith-based movie? Like, what does that actually mean? So we usually have to wait till the end for all your goodies. So I'm going to throw it to you first and say, you talk to us first. Like, when you hear faith-based film, what does that even mean to you and to your family?
Well, yeah, to me and my family, that I automatically think Christian. And I have to pause myself and make sure that I research or look into it if something is labeled faith-based, because that's not what everybody means. And because people kind of throw out the word faith to mean a lot of different things. And I guess I'm just in my little bubble, and don't even think oh, you could be talking about Hindu faith, or you could be talking about the Muslim faith. Like, you could literally be talking about any type of belief system. And so I really automatically would think Christian. I would automatically think this is a film where they're talking about God, at least, or possibly Jesus. And so that's what I think. Kindred Brothers, I think those types of films, like a War Room or something, when I think faith-based. And I know now, though, that I have to do my research, that that's not necessarily what it means all the time.
Yeah, that's good. Absolutely. I think you're onto something with that.
I'm going to throw in, while you mention that's a beautiful segue to also throw out the disclaimer that casting notices, y'all. If you see casting notices for a faith-based movie, you've got to do your due diligence. You have to do your digging, because within every community of faith, the Lord told us, I'm sending you out as sheep among wolves. And he told us, that's literally what's going to happen. So expect it, be prepared for it, and just know that it is a thing. Not, hey, this might happen. No, this is happening. And so even in our faith-based world, we need to watch out that not all that glitters is gold, and we need to just be constantly taking the Holy Spirit and going back to this, like, Lord, what are you saying? What are you doing? Are you behind this? Are you the light behind this? Because even Satan himself appears as an angel of light. Whoa,
That's
scary.
right.
If
Yeah.
it's only scary if we're not discerning and we're not
Mhm.
keeping it in prayer. But I tell folks, even with casting notices on Christian casting on Room 4, I'm like, hey, y'all, pray about it. Just because I've shared it, like, just please pray about it. So, Keys, I love that you're saying that same process needs to apply even before we watch a movie that is proclaimed as faith-based, or even before we trust a director or a producer who claims they are faith-based. Like, do your digging, do your internet research, but also do that research on your knees and say, Lord, what are you behind this or not? Just show me.
Yeah.
So
There's also the major difference between the content that's being created and the content creators as well. Because at the end of the day, a film in and of itself may end up encompassing some of those genre conventions that define faith-based genre, if you will. But the creators behind it are not. And that happens a ton. That happens a ton in the industry. In fact, that happens a lot in Hollywood when they attempt at making some content, some film that approaches the faith-based genre. I don't know anything in particular about Martin Scorsese's private life or anything, but that his film Silence, I personally think is a faith-based film. It's a very powerful film. And I won't get into what the film itself is about, but I don't know what that set was like. I don't know how that set was run. I don't know what morals or values were incorporated into the set. I'm assuming it was just kind of like, hey, we're here to make a piece of entertainment. We're here, and it's creatives from all walks of life, from all elements of wherever they're at in their personal walk, coming together to service a story. The story at the end of the day, separated from the people and the creators, was just this powerful piece. Likewise, I have no idea what Mel Gibson's Passion of the Christ set was like. That film, was changed, it revolutionized the industry. I think that was probably the pin, the marker that everybody places on saying, okay, faith-based began here, but how was that set? I mean, look, we all know that Mel Gibson has a reputation wherever he's at in his faith walk. Like, I personally don't know that, but we know the reputation that he's had. Was his set like that? I don't know. And so you as an actor, when you are approaching a project, there's also that component that there is I'm assuming you have the script, and so there's the script, there's what the goal is to be created, and then there are the creators, and then there's you and the role that you're going to play in that telling, and you have to juggle all of that, and you yourself have to know yourself and know where you're comfortable, where you draw the line, and where you're willing to partake in the creation of something. That if you're like, this piece needs to be created, well, use that, weigh that against, okay, well, what's the creation process itself going to be like? And it's like any other workplace, and if the filmmaker says they are a faith-based filmmaker, well, we're all in different points in our walk.
Absolutely.
And so we don't know where that filmmaker is at his walk. He's probably in his own mind, like, honoring the Lord to the nth degree, and you're looking at it and you're like, oh my goodness, this little heathen, what's he doing? We don't know. And so, like, it's so challenging for actors. It's so challenging. But at that point, it's like, you also, that's why I'm very interested about how this topic regarding the faith-based genre is going to go, because I personally stand in this weird flux between what it is, what it isn't, and where it's headed. But I felt as though it was important to also just make the disclaimer about there's the film that's at the end, that before you watch it, know what you're watching. Then there's before you even get involved in the process, know, the den that you're entering into, and the sheep inside, and the wolves that are in there as well. But then there's also the difference between the two, and discerning, as you're approaching yourself as a creator, wherever you fall in the spectrum of creation, whether you're a composer or an actor, knowing the end product and the process to getting to that end product and the role that you personally are going to play in that.
That's so good. I think that's such a good reminder that as an individual, whether you're the actor, screenwriter, director, whatever, you are bringing yourself into this. And if you are a Jesus follower, and I, being one, I speak only from this perspective, but I think no matter, what faith you represent, I know for us, for me and the faith that I stand in, it's my responsibility to represent that in a loving way, no matter what kind of set I am on, and doing that without any kind of judgment or pretense, and having that open heart, for just, again, it doesn't matter. Like maybe I'm getting ahead here, but like, I think for again, my faith, I think we all believe that, the same direction. We should be touching everybody. It shouldn't just be only people ever of this faith only. That's my personal opinion. But that being said, and I think, Xavier, maybe you were starting to touch on this a minute ago, we are all called to different places. God is using us all in unique ways. I know there are some film creators who they identify as Christians. That's their faith. But they don't make exclusively Christian films, meaning it's, it doesn't have, scripture baked into it, and it's not marketed directly towards Christians. But they see it as their ministry. I know actors that are this way as well. They see it as their ministry to be present anywhere God calls them. And, I'm going to just live my life essentially, regardless. And then I think that we have some who, kind of like the Kendrick brothers, like they are called to make these specific kind of films for a specific audience. We need it all, I think.
Yeah. You got to know yourself,
Yeah.
you really do, because that's all you can really control in these kinds of environments. And you got to know what you're never willing to compromise, and know, and just do your due diligence, and know as much as you can, so that you can prayerfully enter into these circumstances, having been equipped properly, properly equipping yourself spiritually, but then even just in the natural stuff, like as a creative, as an artist, being properly equipped to entering into this so that you can deliver the very best. This is about excellence at the very end of the day. We're all talking about how to elevate, and the fact that there's a rebranding happening even in the faith-based genre, and because there's an elevating of story content. And I feel like old conventions as to like what faith-based means is, some of that is being shook off a little bit. So and it's being redefined. I don't know that we have ever, it's been a long time since genres have been created. We're going back to Aristotle, right? When like genres were being formulated as a result of the audience storyteller relationship. And it's happening again with this faith-based genre, that we are putting out now story in a medium that is relatively new in as far as the span of time is concerned. Film, cinema is 100 years old, and now there's an audience that's specifically hungry for a genre that is being forged and molded and defined as we speak, as it's happening. And I know that a lot of people like to point to the Kendrick brothers as being kind of like the pioneers, or at least the trendsetters. They kind of, paved the way for the creation of this, but there have been many people prior to them that have been doing this, clearly, obviously not with as much success as them. That's what sets them apart. But it is now that it is entered into the marketplace in a really powerful way, that we're all having to grapple with what is faith-based. What is this? What is this genre? Because now money's involved, and now we are having to define it so that it can be used, well, in the marketplace. And that oftentimes is what allows for these types of things to, just kind of come about, to kind of be defined, for us to have to wrestle with them the moment that it enters, capitalism. And so let's talk about that. Let's talk about what is, how it's being redefined. And I could keep going, but I want to dialogue this thing out.
So I'm going to go to another extreme. Listen, we're all 40s ish, so whatever my kids tell me, Mom, Facebook is for people in their 40s. Well, fabulous. Cause that's where I'm at. But there is so much value. Drew, even you've talked about, even for our younger generations who might be listening, like, listen, a lot of the people who are in this industry doing the things that you want to be involved in happen to be, 40s and above. So Facebook is actually a great place for you to be. And there are one thing I love about it are all the Christian filmmaker groups. And there are some incredible discussions that happen inside those Christian actor and Christian filmmaker groups. One of them that I saw recently was, hey, check out the trailer for my newest faith-based horror film. And I was like, I said, listen, I cannot handle a good Twilight Zone episode. Like, it gets me all jittery inside. So could you just, without me watching your trailer, because I'm rather petrified, could you just please explain to me how, no judgment coming from me. I'm genuinely curious. How did you feel as though you achieved a crossroads between horror and faith-based? I'm genuinely curious about your thoughts. And I'm terrified to click play. So can you just talk me through this? And so in the comments, it was interesting to see what happened, because this one guy was like, not even the filmmaker. He's like, I'm just going to guess, but listen, the Bible is filled with horror. And really, if we depicted what actually happened in the Bible, that's pretty horrific. And so then he gives some examples. And then the original poster, the OP, comes in and he's like, okay, so actually you hit the nail on the head. And so he's talking about, themes of redemption and things that you couldn't express unless you showed horror of it. And I was like, okay, you can go ahead and hang on to that. I'm still not play on your trailer. I know myself. Okay. I know the boundaries around my mind that I need to keep. And that's probably not going to contain your faith-based horror film. However, I just thought it was interesting because there is constantly, do you guys hear about the talk? Like, we need to be grittier. We need to tackle the tough stuff. And I think that there's a very fine line, because then all of a sudden it's not a PG or G movie that's faith-based. It's like, if you're going to tackle that stuff, now all of a sudden it's got to be rated R. And that happened. What was that movie?
Well, Passion of the Christ was rated R.
Well, Passion of the Christ. And then there was one a couple of years ago. Not Redemption. It was something, but they threw a rated R label on it. And then there was all of this chatter around it saying, well, no, that's the secular world sabotaging our film. It's not rated R. It's not, I can't remember. Kevin Sorbo was in it because he's in a lot of them. But I don't remember the name of that film, but same thing, like, where then Christians were torn, like, do I go see it? Cause it's a rated R film and that's a boundary I have. Do I, but they say it's faith-based and it doesn't deserve that label. So there's so many interesting things happening.
I think broadening is a word that fits here, because I think that's what we are seeing so much of. Like Xavier said, let's talk about the rebranding, and pointing back to this article that we shared on the socials this past week. It came out of IndieWire. And there are several floating around out there right now that are great on this topic. But it was about, again, the rebranding of the faith-based movies has begun, and that's what's happening. You're seeing a lot of blending of genres, just in general. I think across the film space, like, how many times, do you look at like Amazon or Netflix or something and you see, it gives you like the categories that they fall into, and it's dramedy is huge right now, because we've realized, like, we're very dimensional humans, and when we watch a piece of entertainment, we want to go on a journey. We want an experience with it, and that means you're going to laugh, you're going to cry, and some things in between, and that's real life, and that's scripture, and God has emotions too. How about that? So I think that, again, like we've talked about, I think in every episode, the audience is craving that authenticity, and so a blending of genres, a blending of a broadening of the term, faith-based, it's touching on topics that are real, that have a life-giving message, and they're also rooted in, a message that, has some, what's the word I'm looking for? Oh, shoot.
Redemptive qualities.
Yes. Redemptive quality. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that it is, straight up plucked out of scripture, or it has to have all these Bible verses woven into it. It can be a little more, it doesn't have to be so overt. But
Yeah.
anyway.
No, I look, genre and genre films. Whenever you see a genre, you're making a promise to your audience that these are the conventions that are going to, that this film is going to follow, and the audience then therefore clicks on it knowing what to expect. And most audiences are looking to be entertained. They're looking to be driven through a narrative. Either they're looking to be scared, they're looking to be, to laugh, they're looking to cry, or whatever it may be. And the genre identifies that. And there are filmmakers, for example, I'll just throw Christopher Nolan out there, who just kind of ignores genre in general and just services the story. Now, you can't necessarily totally ignore genre conventions, because even as you're telling the story, it is going to end up falling into some sort of a genre, and every genre comes with rules, right? Like if you're making a romantic comedy, at some point your lead has to find, that romantic counterpart, and they have to have, that first meet moment where their eyes glisten and they blink with whatever, with love in their eyes. And then there's that moment, and then it all falls apart, and then they have to find themselves again. Like there are these conventions that are followed the genre. However, the thing about faith-based is that it's like it kind of borders both. It is both a genre and it is not at all. For example, you talk about like films that are rated R, and most people say, well, if it's rated R, it's out of the genre, it's out of faith-based. But then you've got, like we said, Passion of the Christ, you've got Hacksaw Ridge, which is another one, or
So
Silence, which I brought up earlier.
Yeah, and I looked it up. It was The Reliant, and the Christian Post.
The Reliant.
I didn't realize it was 2018. It says Christian film starring Kevin Sorbo gets an R rating despite family-friendly content. Did you guys see The Reliant? I had not.
It was actually funny. In our previous episode, we talked about ICFF. It debuted at ICFF, and I was there when it debuted. I got to see it, and yeah, that was kind of like the sticking point, and it was being used brilliantly enough in their marketing, and I don't know how much it was the filmmakers themselves using that, or if it was kind of like the chatter around it. It's like, oh, look, they they put an R rating on us. We're being held back. They don't want us to see, I know how much
we assume that R rating means that it's full of nudity, curse words, a whole lot of things that are very explicit.
And offensive to the faith, and offensive to those that are trying to walk in purity of sight and sound and whatnot. So yes,
right. But I think that we are seeing, pick on Jesus Revolution, for example. There's a scene in that film where one of the characters has an overdose situation. What's happening. It's very obvious. I say it's obvious. It's apparent. They don't cross lines in getting extremely graphic with what's happening. And so I think that that's something that, in this space, that's something that I feel like I hear just kind of anecdotally from friends that I'm talking to, whether it's at church or wherever, or other actors, people who are in the business, that say, why don't we need to like kind of tackle some tough topics? I think people again are craving that, but having it done in a respectful, tasteful sort of way that evokes conversation after the fact. To me, that's a great film. Or a great piece of content, a show, whatever. After the fact, you're wanting to dialogue about it. So I think that's
tough. That's so tough though, because it's like at the end of the day, it comes down to servicing your audience and identifying who your audience is. I can give you a
Yeah.
personal anecdote. Like I saw Jesus of Nazareth and it was like, okay. But then I saw Passion of the Christ and I saw the flesh ripped off of his body and I
Same.
saw the blood squirting at the camera, and that changed me forever. And at that point I said yes to Jesus.
Wow.
It wasn't, so
Mhm. And that was not a polite representation
it
of
wasn't
Jesus of
at
Nazareth.
all. It was,
Yeah.
and you know what?
Yeah.
That was the
See what you're saying?
controversy at the time. It was actually extremely offensive to the faith because it was like, why do you have to be so gratuitous about it?
Right.
And
Yeah.
I get it. I get it now after having walked, in the faith. I'm like, yeah, why you got to be so gratuitous about it? But like back then,
that got your attention.
18-year-old me was like,
Yeah.
that's exactly what I needed to see. Otherwise, and I remember in the theater,
Yeah.
myself, little heathen Xavier, like I'm staring there and I'm bawling my eyes out. And I'm
Right.
bawling my eyes out. Never known anything about this, Jesus character. I'm bawling my eyes out. I'm like, I need to know him. I need to know why he
Wow.
did this, So,
Right.
and that's a unique example. But like, let's spread that across other genres, in romantic comedy and horror and whatnot. Like, it's just, it's tough because now we're seeing the faith-based word being put into different genres, and that's when it's now being taken out of its traditional genre conventions that I think the Kendrick brothers they created the framework for it, or at least they created the framework that works in the box office, and now people are trying to balance between the message and the business, and they're trying to find a way to balance between the message and the business. Because if you go full message, guess what? You're probably not going to make a lot of money unless it falls strictly within the conventions that were created by the Kendricks. Because if you fall out of that box, the film is not, it's not going to do well. If it's a message film and it's falling out of that box, it's not going to do well. There's this balance that's trying to happen now between the message of the film and the business of the film. And the Kendricks they have mastered how to be a fully message film, but also give it box office success. And it's because they have done a great job at defining the genre conventions that the majority of a very specific subgroup of Christianity, it happens to be the largest, that is interested in cinema, will go to see. And if you're going to try and do a message film but fall out of that, it's not going to be successful with that large group that is right now leading the charge and supporting entertainment. But there are people that are outside of that appreciate the faith element sewn into the narrative, but want to watch Fast and the Furious, or they want to watch the movie Taken, or they want to, which is what Sound of Freedom was. If you think about Sound of Freedom, Sound of Freedom was the movie Taken, just without Liam Neeson and without I will find you. And I will, but that's what it was. And it did so well, not because it was a faith film, because Sound of Freedom wasn't marketed that way, nor was it really a faith film. It just happened to have actors that are known in the faith-based world, a filmmaker that has a heart, for the faith-based genre, if you will. And all of that then was usurped by the faith-based audience that says, this is our film, But again, we're seeing that, and we're seeing now that film in and of itself was an action. I don't know, like it was an action rescue film. You know what I mean? So anyway,
but
sorry.
You mentioned Sound of Freedom, but the director of that does not want to be labeled as a faith-based filmmaker. He doesn't like that label. And so for him, it's like, I make stories. Like, I want to unify
for everybody.
He feels like faith-based, that putting that label on it, it's like separating people and it brings division. So he doesn't want to. Right. So I mean, I even think about how that rapper Lecrae was like, I'm not a Christian rapper. Like, it's people who do that, who reject the labels and go, because you put that label on me, you're going to exclude a whole bunch of people who go, oh, I never watch that because I'm not a faith person. I'm an atheist. I don't want to see some, you know. And so even people who aren't necessarily against God would still go, that's not for me if it has that label on it. And so it's like you're excluding all of these people from seeing something that would probably be really beneficial to them. So he's like, don't put that label on me. So I think it's interesting too, how people will reject that, because it doesn't matter necessarily how the filmmaker defines what faith-based is. It matters how the audience does.
Oh,
Exactly.
Like the people,
Exactly.
if people are defining it a certain way, then they're like, oh, that's not for me then.
Right.
You know?
And you need to know your audience. And at the end of the day, that's really what it comes down to. As whether you're an actor, you're a director, you're a producer, service your audience. And if you are trying to get into the faith-based industry, then know that there are things that are successful and there are things that are not. And know how to service that audience, because it's that audience that's going to choose whether or not they want to watch your film. Now, if at the end of the day, you don't care about making any money, you just, there's this message that you need to tell. And I don't care who I offend. I don't care what, how I do it. I just need to tell, and I need to tell it that way. Fine, go ahead, do that. You're probably not going to get a lot of people to view it, or at least a very narrow, subgroup. Otherwise, if you're trying to turn it into a business and you're like, no, this is going to be a part of my tent making, you got to balance then how much of it is it your tent making, how much is it your ministry? Because if you want to do this over and over and over and over again, well, your audience is the people that are going to empower you to be able to do this over and over and over again.
It's a good reminder.
If knowing your audience, the Kendrick brothers will say, I think it was Stephen at the last Christian Worldview Film Festival, he said, we make movies for the church. Like we know that that's the target audience. And they have like this ingredient list, it's like check, 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 check.
Yeah.
Hallmark also has an ingredient list, and it is precise. I've been on a team that was trying desperately to get their film onto Hallmark, and it was like, well, you got to tweak this. Oh, nope. Half an ounce too much of this. Oh, nope. You can't have any of this ingredient in there. And Hallmark has such a strict format for their films. Like literally, that's why you can say, oh, that's a Hallmark film. It has become a genre of its own because they have such a strict ingredient list. And I say that jokingly, but like, when I was first married, I married into a Hispanic family, and I thought cilantro was just gross. And now I'm like, my son, I know my son last night, I have a picture to send you, Xavier. It is my 3-year-old son with a hand of greens in his mouth. And I go, buddy, what are you doing? He goes, I'm eating my salad. And he's got a handful of cilantro and he's just eating it. And that's a developed taste, right? But I think using that analogy of ingredients, I think that even our taste buds are shifting. Do you guys sense that? Like we would have not embraced 10 years ago in faith-based films. Like we're sort of going, okay, this is maybe a necessary ingredient, and then you almost come to like it. Like now I'm like, I truly love, so not blasphemous any longer, I love cilantro these days. And it's funny how what was just, we would have shut our eyes to completely, like even you were saying, Xavier, with like a rated R, 10 years ago might have said, okay, well, no, I'm not watching that, period. Like that simple little symbol there is going to completely alienate me from that entire movie and its message. And now it's like, well, let me look into it. Let me see who is the filmmaker. What other projects have they been on? Have they done any interviews that tell us about the heart behind this project? Like what does that mean? And I think it's I just think it's such an interesting conversation.
Laura, you bring up something though, like that I think is endemic to just Christianity in general, and we've been seeing it since 325, AD, and we as Christians tend to over time just sort of compromise. It's just a part of the faith, and as culture moves forward, we go along with it. And I say 325 AD, just thinking about, the Nicene Council and the bringing together of the books of the Bible, but, and establishing that as like the set story cover to cover, Genesis to Revelation. And just from that point on, the compromise that has happened with faithful living toward the word. Look, we're at a cinema, like I said, is, been around for 100 years, just over 100 years. And we're now, I feel like, as a faith-based genre group, whatever, getting now to a point where, as the culture is shifting and success is being had in the genre, there's a bit of a relaxing, and there's a bit of a compromising, and there's a bit of a, well, as the culture goes, so shall we. And that's just a part of us as humans and why we need redemption, right? So at the end of the day, it's like, okay, what are you doing this for? Because if it's purely just story for entertainment purposes, then that falls in one category. If you're using it because it's like you're going to preach the word, that's something else. That's something else.
I literally found myself praying the other day. I was thinking, Revelation is like, come out of her, my people, come out of Babylon, is, a message to the church. And I remember thinking the other day, like, Lord, it is hard living in Babylon. Like, if you just knew how hard, it's almost impossible to navigate here. And immediately the Holy Spirit was like, oh, you mean kind of like Daniel? What did Daniel? He was in Babylon. I was like, oh, prick.
Right.
Okay, I get it. Like, he didn't compromise. Babylon existed all around him, and he remained unchanged. His God remained unchanged. And so I think that that's a very careful balance that we need to have, is that we were talking about salt and light earlier, and I can't, we're out of time already, but we were talking about being salt and light, and that is in Matthew, and it is I think it's Matthew 15, and it says that if we, like, if the salt, like, we are the salt of the earth, and if the salt has lost its saltiness, it's literally good for nothing, and then it's like in a light, you don't cover it, because the light is intended to give light to the whole room, and that's going to mean everyone we encounter. Like, you were I think, Drew, you were saying, like, we need to go in, and when we walk into the room, we need to bring that light with us, so that we change the atmosphere around us. We don't allow it to change us. And maybe that's the bottom line of faith-based film is have we allowed ourselves as culture, have we allowed ourselves to be changed, or have we changed the culture around us?
Absolutely. Be the thermostat, not the thermometer.
Yes.
Yeah.
You bring up Daniel.
Daniel 1, it's about what's in us. We can't go in at the same junk from the world is in us that's in everybody else. And so he refused the king's food.
Yes.
So it's like, what are you feeding on, though? Are you feeding on the same stuff that everybody else is? Are you feeding on social media, not in a way of like connecting with people, but are you comparing yourself to people? Are you, is your
engaging in hateful commentary
in this? Are you making films and you're wrapped up in your success in that way? Or so it really is about, like, for you to be different and not compromise, you have to eat differently, for you to be
here's what we're asking of ourselves. Here's what when you bring that up, Keys, here's what we're asking of ourselves. Because in order for Daniel not to compromise and to come to that place, think about what he went through. Think of the suffering. First and foremost, he's made a eunuch. Okay. Yeah. Then after that, and prior to that, he's ripped from his home, forced into a new environment, forced into a new culture, forced into a place where everything around him goes completely against everything that he's ever stood for. His home destroyed, right? Jerusalem destroyed. I mean, all of the suffering. And so we're saying, hey, we must remain untainted. And well, it's like you're also asking to walk that same walk in those shoes. So in order to do that, are you also willing to become the eunuch, to become ripped and separated, isolated, broken, almost to the brink of destroyed, so that you can say, I've got nothing else except for God, and so I will not eat the king's food. We're not built that way as humans, apart from the work of the Ruach, the work of the Holy Spirit at work in us. So it's a tall ask. It's hard, what we're saying. And I think everybody has to personally balance that and see to what degree, to what point up that hill leading the cavalry, will they carry the cross? Some people may be able to take it to the top, others won't. And you know what? God will use every single one along the way. Every single step that you take, whether it's just one and that's all you can do, and you drop it and you say, I'm sorry, Jesus, I'm sorry, then Simon the Cyrene will come and take over. So it's an interesting thing. It's such an individual thing. And that's what comes down to, like, the personal relationship that we have with God, and he'll walk us through that process. And I think there is room for a lot of what we create. There's room for it, because the same way that I was reached by passion, and the person next to me was completely repulsed by it. Your project can be that. Just know that it might just be an audience of, like, your mom, and that's it. And you put in like $2 million, and it's just, like, you just got to know that going into that, know who you're servicing, what you're servicing.
Yeah.
I feel like I should have had that little sports horn, like the whir, so I could be like, all right, guys, we're going officially into overtime, because we have gone into overtime. But I think that these things are necessary. And one thought I want to end with is maybe with this culture with media, we know that it is a force that is around us that is going to stay. And I love that Facebook meme that says, the same boiling water will harden an egg, will soften a potato, and yet will be changed by coffee. So it's like, who do you want to be? The coffee goes in and it changes all the water around it. Egg and the potato remain inevitably, irreversibly changed by the boiling water, but only does the coffee go in and change the water. And I thought that was a pretty cool concept. So maybe that's what the essence of our faith-based film is that we go into the fire, we go into that heat, and we remain unchanged, with a goal of changing the world around us, reaching the lost through whatever means the Lord calls us to do it.
Absolutely.
And whether that is an 18-year-old heathen who just needs to be grasped by gratuitous suffering, or if it's a Kendrick Brothers movie for a child who's fallen away from the Lord but knows where he belongs. And like, we all have to find our place as the body. I think that, and one of you guys said that, is like, we need to ask the Lord, what is my part in this industry, and stay faithful, be the part of the body that you are called to be.
Absolutely.
And before you worry about the log in somebody else's eye, like, just focus on your lane and stay committed to the Holy Spirit and to the Lord's leading, and say, what is my job in this industry, and what does that look like? But y'all, we are 7
and do it excellently.
Yes,
that's right. That's
with
right. That's good.
With authenticity. So for those of you who hung out to the final buzzer, we appreciate it. And there's hours more that we could talk about within this topic, but we would love to know your thoughts too. So please let us know if we hit on something that resonated with you, or if we totally missed the boat. Like, we know that there are 100 different perspectives out there and more. So share with us. We would love to hear some feedback from you guys. And next show, we'll be back with some more events, some more giveaways. But why don't you, real quick, Key, since we're over anyway, let's give a shout out to our sponsor and give her some love, and then we'll wrap.
Yeah, this episode is sponsored by Personal Powerhouse Sweets. Yes, actor Venus Monique of Vindication fame has started Personal Powerhouse, and we are giving away 1 month of this Powerhouse Suite that's for women. It's for Christian actresses in film. And we're also giving away 2 coaching sessions, and that's for men and women, to help you get your resume, your website, your Actors Access, your reels, all that stuff together. So make sure you go to the ROOM4 app, our socials and all that. Look for the giveaway post, like it, and comment and sing, so we can know that you want to be entered into this giveaway. We have it open all month of April, so hopefully you can be a part of that.
I love it. And if you want more details, she covered it a lot more in our last show. So go check into that episode. And until next time, appreciate you guys. And we'll see you in a couple weeks on the ROOM4 Recap.
Bye.
Bye.